Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. This is one you want to watch because this is going to be a massive story, already is a massive story, but it's going to take a huge step forward. We're looking here at the COVID inquiry. Now, long-term friend of the channel, someone who I know many people admire, respect, and are very, very supportive of, and that is Lesley Roberts. She is now finally going to be giving her evidence to the COVID inquiry. Now, I did a quick sort of flash video on this yesterday evening when the news came up, but I said also that it was going to get the full story today. We are going to look at it now. Before we go into it, two things. Number one, do please hit the like button on this video. Needs to really help out with the algorithm and put the story wide. Secondly, if you're yet to subscribe, please do subscribe on this story. This is going to be massive because this relates not only to the COVID inquiry here, but obviously will have implications with Operation Copa later on, perhaps, maybe. Now, the second thing I want to say is that I have, subsequent to this story coming out, had a quick contact with Lesley. And I've invited her on to do a Zoom. However, she's declined, not because we've fallen out, none of that at all. She's going to be coming on and doing the Zoom. However, for the purposes of basically protection of the integrity of her evidence, she doesn't want to say anything. In case, even if it's accidental and so forth, she wants to ensure that her evidence, when it's given, is untainted, is clean, and has not yet been sort of released to people. It also stops, of course, those who might want to rubbish that evidence from having pre-knowledge of it. So that's the position we're in. But Lesley will happily, and I certainly happily to accept her on, and Lesley will happily come onto the channel after she gives her evidence on the 22nd of May, which is why I say absolutely subscribe. You want to see what Lesley says all about the whole thing after she gives her evidence. And it is, as I say, a game changer with what's happened. We all know some of the things she said. Now, I've got to be careful what I say here. Lesley has intimated things to me in the past, off the record, of which I am only slightly. I mean, she's keeping a lot to herself, and I absolutely don't blame her. But some of the little things that she sort of mentioned to me and sworn to secrecy are way more than whatever we've talked about the channel. And we've talked an awful lot about things on the channel, both in third party like this, or when we've Zoomed and had Lesley on. So there is an absolute rake of stuff. It will really be stirring up the wasp's nest when the evidence is given. And so that's why I say, like this video, get it out, share this video, and do please subscribe. You won't want to miss it. Now we're going to go through quickly here the article in way of preparation for what's going to come and to see what the state of affair is currently. So thank you very much for this somewhat long what's the word? Introduction. Normally I'll do it quite quick, but this one's been longer by necessity. But we'll take a look at the story now. Here goes. So, former nurse vows she will blow the SNP's COVID scandal wide open at the Scottish public inquiry. Now, I know Craig has, on Craig Houston talks to, has covered part of this as well. But I think we're both sort of sitting in the position where we know kind of what's going to happen mainly, but what Lesley's got is way more than what is currently known and in the public domain. So do listen to all the channels involved, and Preston as well. Preston will that Preston journalist as well. He'll be covering it. We're all going to be covering it. We may get different angles, different takes. So do absolutely watch both Craig Houston Talks To and the Preston journalist, because we're all going to be working on this as this story develops. And also, just as an aside on Craig, if you do watch his stuff, absolutely like and subscribe there. because he's having now what I had before with that shadiness with regards to YouTube, and they're sort of cutting impressions and things. So a little bit of a help there. Marvellous for him. Anyway, Lesley Roberts, who led the campaign for justice, including a criminal complaint for corporate manslaughter against Nicola Sturgeon and Jean Freeman, is to give evidence on May the 22nd. And I'm not entirely sure. Ben Borland wrote this. I actually think it's not corporate manslaughter. I believe it's corporate homicide. That may need checking, but I believe it's actually corporate homicide, which is significantly worse for those who may or may not be involved. Anyway, heroic ex-nurse Lesley Roberts is to give evidence at the Scottish COVID inquiry over 2 sessions that promises to blow apart the Scottish Government's handling of the pandemic. It's one of these things where when you know what kind of thing she's going to say, you'll absolutely will. They are going to blow it apart. There's all sorts of things coming out that will be immense. The whistleblower has endured threats and abuse for speaking out about what really happened on the COVID-19 front line, has reported Nicola Sturgeon and Jean Freeman to the Police Scotland for corporate manslaughter. Now that's Operation Copa, separate from the COVID inquiry, and they are currently dealing with that, and we've covered part of that story as well, where the police are actually going up and they're investigating everything involved and speaking to every single person who was a patient, a visitor, a relative, staff, management, everyone they could speak to at every single old people's and retirement home in Scotland. There will be masses of evidence. This is going to be another big case, simply by the dint of the amount of evidence that will be gathered. She has been summoned by the inquiry chair, Lord Brailsford, to the Scottish Land Court on George Street in Edinburgh on Wednesday, May the 22nd, to give evidence over 2 sessions. Miss Roberts said, "It's a double dunter. I think it might be worth getting the popcorn in because I will not be holding back." Now, if you're new to the channel, you won't know this. Us old hands, as it were, have seen Lesley come on, and she does not hold back. And she's worked tirelessly, heroically, fantastically on this issue, on the COVID issue, on Operation Copa. She's worked with the people involved with the GCC, Great Glasgow and Clyde, GGC, NHS, with regards to the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital, all the problems there, children dying with infections, infection control, even that they knew about infections during the build and the management did nothing and all that. She'd worked with potholes. The woman is tireless. This one woman working alone, I mean working as part of a group, but what I mean is she's not backed up with government and civil service or anything like that, and has done, I think, more for Scotland than any politician has in the 25 years of the Parliament there of devolution. She's an absolute hero, and I cannot begin to tell you what a privilege it is for me to know her. What a fantastic woman she is, and just how lucky the people of Scotland are that she's standing up and fighting for what is morally, ethically, and legally right. So, but Lesley knows how I feel, and I think she knows how a lot of people feel. If you're new to the channel, absolutely trust me, Lesley is fantastic. Anyway, it can now be revealed that Miss Roberts has met already with inquiry officials to discuss 3 different areas. The circumstances leading up to her mother Letitia's death in November 2021. And she said, "I have an SPSO outcome which challenges Inverclyde HSCP, Health and Safety Board, on a number of behaviours. Her former job as an infection control nurse within NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, and the impact of a lack of adequate PPE and infection control processes had on patients and staff and the wider community." And Miss Roberts said, "I also spoke about do not resuscitate orders and the NICE NG191 protocols, which ended patients' lives rapidly. Now, within that, Dr. John Campbell, again, another one who's dealt with this, definitely worth flicking over and looking at his as well. And he was explaining how in the early days, before people caught on and went, hang on a minute, we're catching on, they discovered what they were trying to do, and that Gene Freeman had authorised euthanasia as part of the treatment for COVID. And they actually had that in, and they were putting these drugs into people, which were euthanizing drugs, end of life, termination drugs. And that was seen as treatment. And it is horrific. I mean, this is concentration camp stuff that they were doing. And then also they were going to be talking about her role as an accredited Unite trade union rep. She said, I was called on to discuss PPE and other issues, including risk assessment, RIDDOR recording, hazard definition tables, and many other things which impacted on human life during the pandemic. Lesley knows what she's talking about. She's not just some bloke down the pub. She's lived and breathed this at the pointy end for years. She knows what she is. She's an expert. And now they're going to listen to her. Originally, they weren't. Originally, they did not want her to have a say. And she's had to fight and fight and fight. And she's got there. And now they're going to do this. Now, the evidence she has is boxes and boxes of evidence. It is a lot. It's evidence that cannot be dismissed. And it is an absolute time bomb. And there will be people, and I'm going to suggest people, for example, like Nicola Sturgeon, like Gene Freeman, like Humza Yousaf, and others, senior civil servants, senior officials, managers in hospitals, possibly even senior nursing staff in hospitals, doctors in hospitals, all of them who have signed off on things that they knew they shouldn't be signed off. They are going to be, and to put it bluntly, shitting themselves because of what Lesley is likely to come out with. It is explosive. Speaking to the Scottish Daily Express, Miss Roberts said, I will be speaking about how basic infection control was ignored, how all the relevant protocols that would have kept infection in one place were thrown to the wind. Nurses were even taking their uniforms home to wash. She said, I'll be speaking about how all the evidence on face masks was ignored. In some cases, the masks even arrived in boxes saying, warning, does not protect against coronavirus. They did not protect against infectious aerosols, which was why they told us the virus was spread by droplets, not aerosol. They are absolutely at every stage of this. They've lied, they've twisted the truth, they've hidden facts, they've gone back and edited and changed things. They've removed protocols, they've invented new protocols, and at the same time, they're all standing up there on TV, faux tears, holding an onion. Oh, isn't it sad? No, it's, oh, look at me. I am the Grand Mammy of Scotland. She said that is why these people are guilty of corporate manslaughter, because they knew the masks weren't protecting the frontline workers. There was a lack of RIDDOR recording. They were, in essence, shredding the link between contacts so that you could never trace a workplace infection back to the source. They kept moving people around. I know this is what Lesley has said this on the past and on the channel, so this one I can say. That they moved people around, they shifted people from unit to unit, from place to place. They took patients out, didn't test them for COVID, threw them into a random old people's home, didn't tell the family which old people's home. This is what they were doing because they didn't want people to know. They didn't want people to go and investigate. They didn't want family members seeing that they'd put do not resuscitate on patients' records against the will of the patient, and certainly without informed consent from the family. That's not manslaughter. In my mind, and I might be wrong, if you're an expert in the law, tell me, but in my mind doing that is murder. Anyway, she said there was no direct link to show where a nurse or a care worker caught the virus and who they'd been working with at the time. I'll be talking about the DNR CPR, do not attempt CPR, DNA CPRs. I'm going to showcase that what was happening and to say that this was going on. Doctors were walking into the ward and anybody who fell under protected characteristics were getting deemed do not resuscitate. There were people shown to their deaths. These doctors were escorting them there. She also intends to raise her police complaint against Miss Sturgeon and Miss Freeman, which is still under investigation as part of Operation Cobra, I mentioned. And the long-running probe into the joint police Scotland and Crown Office examination to avoidable COVID-19 deaths in care homes and other public settings. Miss Roberts said, at the end of the day, that is who I think is to blame. Nicola Sturgeon, Jean Freeman, Jason Leach, John Swinney. All that cabal of incompetence that deleted their messages and failed to keep minutes from their meetings, and we will never know what they were discussing. It is pretty damning, isn't it? She said, I think there was covering up, and that makes them part and part of corporate manslaughter at the very least, and anybody that is art and part needs to go to jail. And in a normal society, anybody who's done what they have done would go to jail. But how can this investigation possibly be impartial with a Lord Advocate who sits as a government minister? I will be throwing that in for good measure. Many of the issues surrounding the death of Miss Roberts' mother relate to the use of power of attorney. However, her daughter found a DNA CPR notice in a laundry bag containing her mum's soiled clothing after she was discharged from Inverclyde Royal Hospital in 2020. The story is horrific. It is one of the worst things that's ever happened in Scotland. And look and lo, and there in the middle, Nicola Sturgeon, a woman for whom many think instigated this, and who, it is rumoured, had, amongst all the covered up WhatsApps, promoted, possibly, allegedly, the mass murder of thousands upon thousands of elderly people because she deemed them the sort that would vote for the union. They weaponised this pandemic for political ends, and in doing so, in my opinion, and it's just an opinion, has committed mass murder on a scale not seen in Europe since what the Germans did to the Jews in the Second World War. And I hope her punishment is commensurate. I'm coming up. What I have said in that piece is either what's literally in that article in the paper, or it's things that I've discussed on the channel before with Lesley, or, it's been other things that are released. I've released nothing there that is not in the public domain already. I know for a fact that there is a lot more that is not in the public domain already. For that, you will have to wait until Lesley gives her evidence on the 22nd of May. Grab your popcorn, and also grab yourself pitchforks and burning torches and get ready to march on Holyrood, because ultimately I think this will show when she releases it what these people have done to the people of Scotland. You'll be angry. You're going to be very, very angry. Definitely hit the like button on this video. Definitely share this video, and for heaven's sake, hit subscribe. This will run and run, and I will have Lesley on the afternoon of the 23rd, 24th, whenever her evidence sessions are finished. We'll definitely have this. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honour to work on this story with her. It's all her. I only facilitate. But remember that Lesley is the real hero in this. Let's give her all the support we can and thank her for her work. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for spending so long watching this video, and I will move on to other stuff, but this is an important one. Thank you. Goodbye.